Celebrating 25 good years of excellent broadcasting here at the Multimedia Group. We are 25, exactly 25 years since 1995. The first private radio station, Joy 99.7 FM, was birthed.
"25 years down the line, who ever thought that 25 years just seems like yesterday, you know? It's absolutely amazing. I think God has kept us going day in, day out.
Today we'll reconnect you with some of the great and prominent voices on your most loved radio network, particularly the female voices. And on this occasion, we take time to salute frontline health workers standing in the gap for the country as they fight off the nation with a wrecking global pandemic. We'll hear from our MPs who are also eulogizing them. And later in the bulletin, former President John Mahama says Ghana's COVID-19 situation could have been better if the current administration had paid more attention to completing health facilities his administration started.
So if government had diligently continued and added a few more beds and enhanced medical equipment, our situation would have been better than it is today.
In business, Ghana Cooperative Credit Union urges Central Bank to settle locked up funds of the financial institutions. We have details of all this and more in the next 60 minutes. Stay with us. My name is Anas. Many thanks for joining us. Today marks exactly 25 years since Ghana's first private media house, Joy 99.7 FM, was live on the airwaves. Yeah, that is 25 years of the Multimedia Group, and that was on the 1st of May, 1995. As we commence the official broadcast of a line of activities in commemoration of this feat, we say thank you for believing in us and staying with us all through these years, 25 years. Well, today we are connecting with you two of the great and prominent female voices on Joy FM. That's Jifa Bampo and of JoyNews and Eva Otre of Joy Sports, the pace setters who inspired young ones like us, and they'll be sharing some of their memories and experiences here at the Multimedia Group. We'll connect with them shortly, but first, here's how host of the Super Morning Show today, Tommy and Enforcing, introduced the show on Joy FM.
"25 years down the line, who ever thought that 25 years just seems like yesterday, you know? It's absolutely amazing. I think God has kept us going day in, day out. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep your dial locked right here on Joy 99.7. It's going to be absolutely amazing. I don't even know what to say. But to all the guys, especially you listeners who kept us going, you motivated us through the hard times and the good times. But the battle is not over. But on a more serious note, I'd like to say a big thank you to all the frontline health workers who are doing an amazing job in a very difficult time like this. And please, on a daily basis, don't forget the protocols. Like somebody said, wash your hands under running soap and stagnant water. Chai! And don't forget to use your hand sanitizer. You think Tommy and Enforcement has changed? I have changed. There's only one big problem, from bad to worse. So today we'll be talking to all the old folks, those who started. I remember traveling from here to Ajangote. That was one heck of a journey. 1.5 hours. Closing at night, driving down the road, meeting snakes who say hello, and I'll say hello, get away.
And of course, that's Tommy and Enforcing there. I've been enjoying the show this morning. He's not lost team. And when a texter said he's not lost team, he said he's not a kettle to lose team. Tommy has been great. I've been loving the morning show today. But that's what we want to do. We want to relive the old days. And so we're joined via Zoom by my former news editor, Jifa Bampo. Hello, Jifa.
Hello, Ernest, and good morning to all our viewers out there.
Good morning. It's good to see you, Mama Jiff. And viewers should excuse me. I'm sure I'm going to call you that a few times as we have this conversation. I have heard your story because I've had to worry you every now and then to tell me something about Joy FM and how you started. But just walk us through the very first day you got your letter to start work here at Joy FM.
Well, I can't really remember when I got my letter. I rather remember my first day in Joy. So I came into Joy on time, and I beg your pardon, my son is interrupting me a bit.
That's fine.
So I got my letter and I came to work. I remember that first day. I met Kofi Owusu, who was the news editor at the time. I didn't meet Matilda Asante. She was away on training. And then, of course, I met Apesi Sapong, Sena Atoklo, Bennett Frimpong, and, of course, the other technical team members. I remember I met Mohammed and then Sami. So they were the ones who kind of took me through my day.
And you are one of the few women, prominent voices on Joy FM. Share that experience with us briefly, how, you were working in a male-dominated space, and yet you came out so strong. How was the experience like?
Well, when I joined, yes, it was a male-dominated environment. I think apart from myself, Matilda, Araba Kumson, Eva Otri, and then there was one other lady, I can't remember her name immediately, who were really just the ladies in the newsroom. And then it wasn't really even about a male-dominated environment. It was more about matching up to the standard that had been set. So my focus was rather matching up to the competitive environment. That was my main concern, because it was a tough environment to work in. Not because it was difficult, but I guess a standard had been set. They were very good journalists, and you also wanted to make your mark and match that standard. So that really was my concern, to meet the standard and surpass it if possible.
And I guess you did a great job on that. Newsnight started with you, right?
Yes. No, not exactly. So this is how it happened. Okay. We had a 15-minute news program at 6 p.m., which was hosted by Kojo Opong Nkrumah, and he was produced at that time by Sami Rinchi. And then Kojo became the Super Morning Show host. So that program was extended to 30 minutes, and I started hosting it, and Sami was my producer. But with time, it became evident we needed more time to do the show. So it was named Newsnight, and then I was hosting that show for 30 minutes. Later on, Matilda Asante, the news editor at the time, had an idea that I should be paired up with another colleague to give it some interest. So Evans was chosen to join me on the show. So we started doing it for the 30 minutes, it extended to 45 minutes, and then 1 hour. And that is how come it became Newsnight. With myself and Evans. There were different times where I would be alone and Evans would then host the show as well. Those were times that I was away on maternity leave, and then at a point Evans was away at school. So for the 10-year period, each of us would host the show together or alone. And so that's how it became.
We'll give you a few seconds to attend to Parkwesi. Eva is joining us on the line. Hello, Eva. Hello, Eva Otri. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Eva. Thank you for joining us. We're celebrating 25 years. You, Jifa Bampo, and a few of those female voices there influenced journalism as we have it today. Tell us about your story. I don't quite remember listening to you on Joy FM. I think I saw you later on TV. But how did the journey really start for you?
Well, I think I joined Joy FM around 2002, and it was just one afternoon where I was working previously at the Time Sports, Ghanaian Time, the sports section, when Yawam Pankra came over and said, I'm inviting you to Joy FM. The CEO wants to talk to you or see you. So that's how it started. So Yao said, okay, so we're going over there. I didn't really know what was really at stake, but I just went in there. I didn't think, well, I had anything to lose, so I walked in there. But then I walked in, he took me into the newsroom, and then I realized that there had probably been conversations around me or something of the sort, because it looked as though everybody felt, oh, she was here. Even though I didn't know
I think that the connection to you is not really great. The connection to you is not really great. We'll try and fix that. We'll call you back. If I have Jifa Bampo still with us on Zoom. Jifa, I'd like to find out, in your line of work, you deal with all these politicians, and I think that sometimes you really have to deal with the issue of your gender because you're a female. Did you have times when you thought people were bullying you just because you were female?
I don't think I put that in my mind, to be honest. I think at the time, when I started doing a lot of the political interviews, I think I rather used being a woman to my advantage. So I tried to use the softer side. I know a lot of my fans and people who watched and listened say that I'm quite tough. But the truth is, I try and soften the ground before I do an interview. So I have a chat with the interviewee and, make them know that, look, this is not personal. This is really just about us doing our job, they and me. So there were a few times I did get bullied, but it wasn't because I'm a woman. It was really because maybe I didn't prepare very well. And I think I remember 2 interviews, one with Charles Rekubrebe, which I know he and I, when we meet, we always talk about, and then one with Dr. Tony Edu. So I don't think I prepared very well, and so I got bullied a bit. But I learned from that experience, and I don't think after that anyone had the chance to bully me.
Great. Eva joins us again on the line. Eva, so you were telling us you worked with Ghanaian Times and then you had the opportunity to join Joy FM. This was your first radio work, I guess.
Yes, I had appeared on a few radio programs as a guest.
Okay, to do analysis?
As a panelist,
okay.
But this was the first time I was working at a radio station as a broadcaster.
And I guess you were the only lady on the sports team.
Sure, at the time. That was a rarity. Before I joined Joy FM, there used to be Mavis Akoto.
Okay.
And but Mavis sojourned to the U.S. I think she's still in the United States of America. So Yao and Mavis had been hosting the sports for a while until Mavis left. So I came in after Mavis Akoto had left. And so at the time, I was the only female on radio, basically, doing sports.
We still do not have a lot of females doing the sports journalism, but we have a few in the system. There's Barbara Tando, our very own, and we're trying to reconnect her. We also have Juliet Baywa, I think. What do you think your time here at Joy FM did for sports journalism as far as females are concerned?
Well, I hope that, I had the opportunity to talk to some of the names that you've mentioned. Juliet Bewa is a very good friend of mine. I know Veronica Comey. They all came to Time when I was already there. So I know these few names that you have mentioned, and I am glad that in more ways than one, I had my work at Joy FM impacted some way, somehow on the desire and passion for them to be in sports. And I hope that is the legacy that I left. That because the whole point of having that privilege, the opportunity, such a platform, is to impact generations unborn. And so I am glad that, at least, I mean, I've heard a few people say that we used to listen to you and we were inspired to go in there and do things. It's a pity that we don't have many more females at this time as we would have expected. I wish that there were many more female voices on sports programs, on radio. But thankfully, that was the whole point, that give it my best shot. At the time, I didn't think that I would make any weight or impact life in that manner. But each time you were on that platform, there was always the need to exhibit the highest sense of professionalism and to minimize any form of error. You know, I could say that in my time at Joy FM, there was little or no room for error. You know, you had a memo coming at you if you went on air and mispronounced the word or
I can imagine, yeah.
Yes. I mean, you had Kofi Owusu and Matilda Fancy breathing down your neck. So there was no room for error, and you were constantly reminded of the fact that your listeners were unforgiving. And so making errors was not an option at all for you.
Tell us about how Joy Sports changed you as a woman and prepared you for what you're doing today.
Well, so today I am a lawyer as well. So I am combining journalism, but journalism at a minimal level now. I'm focusing a lot more on legal practice currently. And you know that the legal field is also a male-dominated field.
Yes, it is.
Even if you look at the terminologies that are used in there, you can tell that for decades it has been a male-dominated field. Yeah. I mean, you know, but the advantage that I think I have, and that is something that I enjoy using as a lawyer, is advocacy for me. You know, with years of being on radio, articulating views, interviewing personalities, you know, you tend to hone that skill of being confident, of being fearless, of having the temerity to speak in public before an audience without feeling intimidated, no matter the opposition that you're up against. I'm sure that Zifa Bampo would bear testimony to the fact that many a time you would interview personalities who tend to be intimidating, can be outright or downright rude sometimes, you know, and but you still need to handle it in such a way that you still come off looking good.
Great.
Between the two of you. So these interviewing skills, for instance, I see a lot of parallels, similarities rather, between the legal practice and the broadcast journalism, and I think that it helps me. Interviewing skills, advocacy, confidence, you know, and that because you are in an arena where you enter any room, you are likely, in the sports field, you are likely to be the only female. The only female, point, you know?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And you still have to deliver.
Yeah, and that's quite amazing. A lot of lessons from journalism to law. Let's go back to Jifa Bampo. Jifa, At a time when there were just about 5 of you, you mentioned Arabakumsin, Evaltre, and just a few in the space. What do you think that did for women empowerment, in the country? Because I remember at the time, and when you read the history, you realize that there weren't women in a lot of the professional spaces. What did putting people like you on air do for that cause?
Well, Ernest, what I would say is we've already had a lot of women on air elsewhere before I even got into journalism.
Okay.
I guess maybe the difference is that you didn't have many women doing hard news. A lot of the women were doing news presentation, which is not confrontational, or was not confrontational at the time. You just come and read the news. There was no live interviews. They did entertainment shows, magazine shows, news request programs, and music programs as well. But I think the transition with private media was that women had an opportunity to do other things, and especially go into the space that was really male-dominated. Morning shows were done by men. Most of the shows were done by men. So by having some of us do hard news, Matilda really set the pace. But before her, there was a news editor, Suzanne Ayite. So she was also doing hard news interviewing. So we've grown into that space. Obviously, there's more we can do, because there are still not many women doing hard political news. I know there are many who admired us on the radio, but I guess when they come in, they realize that maybe this is not something I want to do. It's hard work, to be honest, doing the hard political news, hard interviews. It takes a lot of reading. It saps up a lot of your time. You have to engage with people. You really have to be on top of your game. But I see that, at least, even though I'm no more at Joy, we still have a lot of the ladies doing that. Gifty and Apia is doing that. Araba does that as well. You have MFA Apau. And I see the younger ones whom I didn't meet. There's a young lady, Nancy MFA, very, very dedicated, very pushy, very, very aggressive in getting her stories and delivering it. And I also see that more people are applying that aggressive approach in the other spaces. So whether it's sports, whether it's entertainment, whatever. So I think it's done a lot to open up the space. There are lots of women now in multimedia, and that's a good thing. But we still don't have women doing a morning show, for instance. We don't have them doing really the hard news shows. And I think that's something we want to see. I think since Adjoa Edu, we've not had any woman do the super morning show.
Yes, a few times I think Matilda, sat in, but yes, you make the point that we've not had a substantive host for a super morning show or a morning show in Ghana. We are wrapping up on this. I know we could have this conversation all day, but just a few words, Jifa, so we wrap it up.
Well, first, I acknowledge Eva Oshie and all the work that she's done. It's great what she's doing now. My congratulations goes to the multimedia group and to Joy FM, of course. You really set the pace. It's a great environment to work. It's an environment that allows people to be competitive, to thrive. I also want to acknowledge all those before me and those after me and all the work the management is doing. And certainly a special congratulations goes to Kwesi Trum. I mean, without him, many of us will not be where we are and be able to be the people that we are. So thanks to everyone and congratulations. I urge the team to continue to work hard, to continue to be fair and balanced, and to also continue to do impactful, compelling journalism.
Jifa, thank you so much. A pleasure speaking to you today as we celebrate 25 years. All right, so let me wrap up with Eva, who is on the line with us. Eva, your final words as we wrap up on this conversation.
Yes, I mean, it's a delight to hear Jifa's voice again after all this while. And I think that she did a fantastic job at Joy FM. But I have to acknowledge the platform that was given to me as a journalist by Joy FM. It's incomparable. In our state, in our local space, that platform is a rare privilege, and I am glad that I was able to utilize that opportunity and make the most of it. So I'm grateful to Kwesichum for creating that platform. And you had all these amazing editors. I mean, today, Eloy, Amanda, and I had the opportunity to reminisce about how pushy Kopio could sometimes be, and you had Matilda Sanse in there, you know. And I said it earlier, no room for slip, especially on air. But all that happened as for life after broadcast journalism, you know, so that wherever space one found herself in, one could compete favorably without feeling intimidated, compete confidently, and I think that is something that I will cherish for the rest of my life. It's been amazing having the opportunity to work at Joy FM back in those days, and I pray that the next 25 will see Joy FM making a greater and even greater impact on the next generation and the generations beyond. But I'm thankful to all the people that I got the opportunity to work with, Matilda Sanse, Kofi Owusu, and all the crazy guys. Asopa Menadazi, Eloy Amande, Kojo Frempong. It was an exciting time, even though we had to work our sock off around the clock on a daily basis to ensure that we gave of our very best and produce shows that we could be proud of.
All right.
Professional.
Eva, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you today as we mark 25 years of Joy of Broadcasting Excellence. Thank you for joining us on Newsdesk. And as we celebrate our frontline workers today, we want to introduce to you the team behind the 100-bed facility being constructed by the Ghana Private Sector COVID Fund 19.
COVID-19 is placing a heavy burden on governments all over the world, and Ghana is not an exception. Governments obviously cannot handle this crisis alone, and it is for this reason that the Ghana COVID-19 Fund was established to raise funding from the private sector to support Ghana's effort to win the COVID-19 war. The targets? Build a 100-bed infectious diseases isolation and treatment facility in 6 weeks, the first of its kind in the country. And here's what is fascinating. All workers are volunteers. So, on a day when we celebrate frontliners, we introduce you to the team building the 100-bed infectious diseases center for free.
Everybody live in isolation, trying very hard to find solutions. We pray for the souls we lost and the heroes who fought.
We're seeing the numbers rise. You look at what your training gives you, the ability to help to design spatial interventions to deal with situations like this. And we've always sort of advocated that within a health emergency, any kind of intervention be looked at as intersectoral. So, we came to this understanding that anything we can offer within this period of time, which is of us, we should be able to give to helping the situation for our country. So I came into this very willingly. I'm sure the rest of my colleagues have the same, but for me, this is why we're doing this as a pro bono, service.
Actually, we all know the pandemic that we are facing, and as a professional, we have the duty to contribute to society. So as we heard of the project and also heard that we should volunteer and work, I think that I could also contribute to the success of the project. So I offered myself to come and contribute.
This is a call to duty, and we all serve in the various professional capacities. And once we heard this, our professional institutions got involved from the built environment. And being surveyors, quantity surveying, land surveying, we decided to offer our service from the institution. That's the institutional representation. And that's what brings to bear the idea of offering yourself for virtually pro bono.
For me, it's a pleasure to join the battle team. I believe that this can be won with team effort from everybody playing a part. And so once the call was made, we thought, no, let's put this aside. Let's put the other hours that we use in making money and doing other professional stuff into something like this, and give our best for this nation.
And we are providing structural engineering services, electrical engineering services, and mechanical engineering services. So we are ensuring that the building will stand to the test of time. We are ensuring that electrical power services are always constant without any interruption. We are also ensuring that here the environment, air conditioning and ventilation is safe.
I feel it's more like a call to duty. At the point when your country needs you the most, you have to contribute with the skill. And for us, our acquired skill with the built environment. We deal with anything that houses people for a specific reason. So with this COVID-19, we had to come up with our expertise to house people who are dealing with this in the best way to ensure good treatment and also prevention of the spread of the disease.
Yeah, I decided to join the team just to serve humanity and the country. It's a pro bono, so when the institution called on me to come and offer my services, I willingly accepted because of the situation at hand. You know, the COVID-19 is a killer, and we are all worried about it. So I asked myself, how do I contribute to save the situation? I offer my professional competence free of charge on this project.
Why did I decide to join? The opportunity came up and we decided to take it. I think it's a good opportunity to be patriotic. Yes, I think that it's, if you're into learn, there's a lot of learning and there's a lot of actualizing what you already learned on a project like this. So it's, even though it's for free, it's a good opportunity also. My work here is to, he does the designs. And what we do is we actualize it for the contractor to be able to carry out the pipe works.
Basically, with the Ghana Forces, for God and country. Yeah, so that's it.
Yes, we will survive. We will survive. Together you and I. Together as one. We will survive. Yeah, no,
And MPs have been eulogizing frontline workers for their efforts in helping Ghana contain the COVID-19 pandemic as the nation marks Workers' Day today. Let's go live to Parliament, where my colleague Joseph Opoku-Gatto joins us with the latest. Joseph, what can you report from the House?
This morning, the House has been approving a loan facility from EcoBank in order to allow for the construction of the Lot 5 and 6 of the Eastern Corridor route. That's what they've been focusing a lot of attention on this morning. But late last night, the Employment Minister, Ignatius Bafwell, who is the MP for Sunyane West, was on the floor. He gave details of how frontline health workers have been helping the nation deal with COVID-19. And he says they are folks who should really be celebrated. Apart from the health people, all the others who've been at the forefront in helping the nation contain the virus are people who should be celebrated. He went on to make the point that although it's very likely that COVID-19 will negatively impact the economy, government commitment to improve upon the welfare of workers generally from healthcare to other areas is something that they are committed to, and that they will put in place the necessary steps to make the lives of workers better. There were contributions to that from the majority leader, Osei Mensah Bonsu, who is also Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, as well as the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu. Haruna Idrisu wants to see a situation where other issues like pensions, like maternity for women, and also the abuse of domestic workers is not ignored, even as everyone focuses on COVID-19 as a way to ensure that workers have better conditions to work in. And the majority leader makes the point that negotiations on whether we should see upward adjustments in salaries and remuneration as far as workers generally are concerned in the light of COVID-19 should begin now, so government is not hit by any surprise going into the future.
So you talk of the loan facility for the Eastern Corridor project. Is that the only reason why our MPs would have to sit today on a holiday?
That's even a side issue that eventually got introduced in the course of yesterday. Once that gets approved, the House will be debating a report from the Finance Committee of Parliament recommending that the House approves the tax waivers for healthcare personnel across the country that the President announced a few weeks ago for a period of 3 months as a way to boost their confidence in dealing with COVID-19. That will be approved in the next few minutes after the loan agreement is approved. As well, you recall that frontline health workers are supposed to get 50% of their basic allowance as additional allowance. Parliament is giving them a tax waiver so they don't have to pay for any extra tax waiver on that allowance. That again will be approved. And additionally, when it comes to the filing of taxes, Parliament will be doing an amendment to the Act establishing the GRA in order to lift the penalties that will accrue once people delay in filing their tax returns as a way to ensure Ghanaians are better cushioned in the light of COVID-19. When all of that is done, then we would hear the closing addresses from the Speaker, from the majority and the minority leaders, and the House will attend indefinitely for at least over the next 2 months. What is the indication you get from the minority? Because I think that the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, had raised issue with due process, and he thinks that the President should have referred to Parliament before even making these announcements as far as the tax waivers are concerned for frontline health workers. He's been raising concerns that announcements are made by the President without due regard to various processes that are required. And then after that is said and done, then the President virtually springs surprises on Parliament and then introduces the Act in order to allow for that in Parliament. He wants to see a situation where negotiations and discussions and collaborations happen at Parliament even before the President goes ahead to make that announcement. But he's been indicating alongside members on the Finance Committee, and again, from the indication we're getting at the level of the Finance Committee of Parliament, is that the minority is backing these tax waivers and also the changes to the GRA law because they agree that that is something that would work in the national interest. Although they have concerns about the due procedure, they make the point that in the broader national interest, they will eventually back it and they will resist any of these approvals that government is seeking from Parliament. Joseph, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed with what's happening on the House on 1st of May, which is a workers' holiday. We have our MPs sitting to approve a number of bills that have been brought to the House by the executive. We'll return to Joseph in our subsequent bulletins for more updates. Meanwhile, former President John Mahama says if the current administration had done more by completing and augmenting equipment at health facilities his administration left behind, Ghana's COVID situation would have been better. Now, he spoke on a Facebook Live session.
Of putting politics before the people. A classic case in point is the University of Ghana Medical Center, which I had the privilege of inaugurating in December 2016, and which was ready for use at the time. After an avoidable but protracted tussle with the University of Ghana authority over the management of the facility and misleading claims by the health minister that the facility did not have a standby power system, it had to take a one-man demonstration and the COVID-19 pandemic for only parts of the hospital to be opened to treat patients. This is a 650-bed Tier 4 hospital that can render cutting-edge services to our people. Today, that facility's ICU, intensive care unit, which was left abandoned for more than 3 years, is saving lives, serving the very purpose for which it was built. Because of the advanced nature of the equipment and facilities in the University of Ghana Medical Center, health staff were sent to Israel for specialized training to come and operate that hospital. These staff have still not been put to work and are currently dispersed all across our health system. The training they received has unfortunately been underutilized. Similar delays have been experienced with the municipal hospital at Ofankor and the Kaswa Polyclinic, both of which we constructed as part of the community development component of the Awoshi-Pokwasi Road and the Kaswa interchange projects. 2 years after they were completed, it had to take intense media and public pressure to get them opened. All this was at a time when the no-bed syndrome had resulted in a sad situation where patients in need of urgent medical attention were turned away from hospitals because of congestion, resulting sometimes in avoidable deaths. Ghanaians died when hospitals completed and ready with a combined capacity of 900 beds had been left standing idle. But for the deliberate slowdown of operationalization of the University of Ghana Medical Center and the Bank Hospital, the unacceptable no-bed syndrome would not have claimed these precious lives. Talking about the Bank Hospital, the rather curious case of that hospital and the International Maritime Hospital cannot escape attention. These are ultra-modern, world-class hospitals built with public funds, and yet have either remained shut or are underutilized. Particularly worrying is the abandonment of some major health facilities that had reached an advanced stage of completion by the time we left office. I refer specifically to the NMS project, under which 7 fully equipped 120-bed district hospitals with staff accommodation commenced in 2013 at Dodowa, Kumawu, Fomena, and Abetifi. By early 2016, the Dodowa Hospital had been completed and commissioned into use, while those at Kumawu, Abetifi, and Fomena had reached various advanced stages of construction by the time I left office in January 2017. Whatever the challenges with these projects, they should not have been left abandoned and left at the mercy of invading weeds and reptiles, and in some cases, been affected by bushfires. Chiefs, queen mothers, and residents of these communities have on many occasions had to beg and appeal to government to allow the contractors to return and resume work, but all to no avail. And what has been the cause of the abandonment and stoppage of work, despite the availability of funds for the continuation and completion? Fruitless and malice-driven value for money audits that yielded virtually nothing. Another case in point is the almost 1-year delay of the Eurojet, the Invest Hospital projects. These projects involved hospitals in Tepa, Nsoko, Trifopraso, Salaga, Konongo, Kumasi Regional Hospital at Sewa, and a new military hospital at Afari in the Ashanti region. For 1 year after the new government came into office, these projects were stalled because the project managers were asked to pay duties and taxes on material and equipment at the ports, even though they had a valid exemption granted by the Parliament of Ghana. This situation robbed the people of Ghana of the timely opportunity to access quality health care, which would have been offered in the catchment areas these facilities were to cover. But for the inexplicable failure to continue these projects, we would have been in a much better position to tackle this COVID-19 pandemic across the country with a more robust health system. In addition to more health workers being employed, they would also have had a more congenial environment to offer their critical services, and our people would have had a more dignifying place to seek health care. While even more investment is required to augment the existing health infrastructure, it is important that the plan to do so is credible and clearly thought through.
And President Akufo-Addo is addressing the nation on May Day celebration. Let's take you live to his Facebook page for that address.
And Kaswa. 2 weeks ago, when I invited the leadership of the Trades Union Congress to Jubilee House, we discussed at length what impact the virus and the measures to contain it have had on businesses and the welfare of workers. In the words of the Honorable TUC Secretary General Dr. Yao Ba, and I quote, "What we are seeing is mind-boggling. Businesses are collapsing in almost all sectors of the economy. Many people have already lost their jobs, and many more would have lost their jobs without the easing of these restrictions," unquote. In spite of this stark assessment, I was encouraged by his statement that the fight against COVID-19 is a shared responsibility. And I want to stress once again that together we will defeat this virus. Like virtually all other countries, Ghana has not been spared the adverse effects of the pandemic. With the International Labour Organization, ILO, estimating that 2.7 billion workers in the world have been affected by the imposition of partial and full lockdowns, preliminary data available to us in Ghana indicates that the impact of the virus on our economy has been dire. Indeed, no sector of our economy has been spared by the pandemic. The Bank of Ghana tells us that the virus will have a negative impact on exports, imports, taxes, foreign investments, and foreign exchange receipts, with GDP growth rate estimated at 2.5% in a worst-case scenario. The virus has also resulted in reduced productivity, job losses, and steep declines in revenue for government, businesses, households, and individuals. Should the pandemic persist for much longer, we could face an uphill battle in trying to minimize its effects on the growth and development of our economy and in ameliorating the suffering of our workers, the poor, and the vulnerable. As government and as social partners, it is our collective responsibility to chart our own course out of this pandemic onto a path of sustained growth, progress, and prosperity, which will safeguard jobs and ensure the safety of the population. It is obvious that a weak response to the threat of COVID-19 would jeopardize the gains made to create a buoyant economy and will worsen the lives and livelihoods of all Ghanaians. So we have put in place a resilience and recovery plan hinged on the coronavirus alleviation program to support businesses and households with the overarching aim to ensure economic activity and sustain livelihoods, and on the $1 billion IMF Rapid Credit Facility to help close the financing gap that has been created as a result of shortfalls in revenues, together with unbudgeted additional expenditures. Equivalent discussions are ongoing with the World Bank to raise more funds, which should be completed soon. I've charged the Ministry of Finance to work with the Bank of Ghana to design innovative policies and find more resources to strengthen the productive sectors of the economy, particularly industry and agriculture. And I understand that the process will shortly yield positive results. The Minister for Finance and his South African counterpart are leading the efforts of African ministers of finance to obtain debt relief for our economies. The World Bank, through the IDA, has granted a debt repayment standstill for the next 9 months, which will result in our delaying principal and interest payments totaling $500 million to create greater fiscal space to promote our economy. I've also asked the Ministers for Finance, Trade and Industry, Food and Agriculture, and the Chief Executive of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center to create a future-proof, resilient plan consistent with the principles of Ghana Beyond Aid. Through the 1.2 billion CD Coronavirus Alleviation Program, government ensured the provision of hot meals and dry food packages to over 400,000 vulnerable families, and has absorbed for 3 months the water bills of all Ghanaians and the electricity bills of all Lifeline customers, and provided a 50% subsidy for all other customers. We've also instituted a comprehensive incentive package to help motivate our health workers, who are the heroes and heroines of our struggle. Government has taken other measures. It has extended the tax filing date from April to June. Through negotiations with the banks, we have ensured a 2% reduction of interest rates by banks, effective last month. And additionally, the banks have granted a 6-month moratorium of principal repayments to entities in the airline and hospitality industries, i.e. hotels, restaurants, car rentals, food vendors, taxis, and Uber operators. Further, in collaboration with the National Board for Small-Scale Industries, business and trade associations, and selected commercial and rural banks, government will, from this month of May, roll out a soft lane scheme up to a total of 600 million cedis to support micro, small, and medium-scale businesses. Loans disbursed will have a 1-year moratorium and 2-year repayment period. The decision by the commercial banks, with the support of the Bank of Ghana, to institute a 3 billion cedi credit and stimulus package to help revitalize industries, especially in the pharmaceutical, hospitality, service, and manufacturing sectors, is one I very much welcome. Workers of Ghana, the onset of this virus has not only led to job losses, but has also revealed the ingenuity and can-do spirit of the Ghanaian, thereby creating jobs. It has stimulated our capacity to produce for ourselves and is making us depend on the things we make and grow for our own survival. This is a clear manifestation of our potential to be able to move this country to a situation of self-sufficiency. Out of adversity, Ghanaian scientists, today, we're able to produce in increasingly large quantities sanitizers and essential personal protective equipment required by our health workers to fight the virus. We have to do even more. It has also led to a paradigm shift in work management protocols and the mainstreaming of digital technology in all aspects of our working lives. To this end, I've directed the Minister for Employment and Labor Relations to lead a national dialogue on the future of work, to fashion out a national strategy so that we're not taken by events as such as this pandemic in the future. Let me state, the government will intensify the implementation of the 4-point national strategy on formalization to facilitate the identification and provision of support, relief, and stimulus packages to businesses and workers in these difficult times. I also assure organized labor the government will continue to deepen its engagement with them as we try to mitigate the adverse impact of COVID-19 on the economy, businesses, and jobs. At this stage, I implore each and every one of you, just as we have done over the last couple of months, to continue to sacrifice so that we do not have to bear a greater cost in the future. All sections of society must see this sacrifice as a common effort to defeat this common enemy. Before I have to conclude, I have to provide you with the current update on our fight against the pandemic. As of yesterday, we have conducted a total of 113,497 tests, the most per million people of any country in Africa, with 2,074 testing positive. Our recoveries have increased from 188 to 212, and the number of deaths stands sadly at 17. Our positivity rate has gone up marginally from 1.5% to 1.8%. 6 persons are critically ill, and 1,839 persons are well and responding to treatment in health facilities or are being managed from home. This, in effect, means that there's presently no big pressure on our healthcare facilities to manage these cases. We pray to God it stays that way. Steps at increasing further our testing capacity have been taken, with the coming on stream of the veterinary laboratory in Accra, the Center for Scientific and Industrial Research Laboratory also in Accra, the University of Health and Allied Sciences in Ho, and the veterinary laboratory in Pont Tamale to aid the labors of the Noguchi Research Institute, the Kumasi Center for Collaborative Research, and the National Public Health Reference Laboratory at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. A number of isolation, quarantine, and test treatment facilities have also been identified across the country for use. The nation is profoundly grateful to the Church of Pentecost for the generous Christian gesture of making available its multi-purpose convention center at Gomuafete as an isolation center which can house over 1,000 persons and 300 medical staff. It is important for every Ghanaian to note that the more people we test for the virus, the more persons will discover as positive, and thus have the opportunity to isolate and treat them. The implementation of this strategy of tracing, testing, and treating is our surest way of rooting out the virus. I've stated time and time again, all the measures put in place to combat the spread of the disease are under constant review, and government will not hesitate to cordon, impose a curfew, trace, test, and treat persons in communities where we're witnessing significant spread of the infections. I will continue to urge all of us to continue to practice social distancing, wash our hands with soap under running water, refrain from shaking hands. Where's my mask? Where's my mask? And wear our masks whenever we leave our homes. Businesses and other workplaces should operate and observe staff management and workplace protocols of social distancing. This applies equally forcefully to public transport operators and users of our marketplaces. We must observe these measures religiously, as they are the weapons of our battle against the virus. With the suspension of all public gatherings still in force and our schools closed, government has taken the decision to extend further the closure of our borders for a month, effective 1 a.m. on Monday, 4th May, until Sunday, 31st of May. We know that the overwhelming majority of positive cases came from travelers or contacts of travelers. So we have no option but to keep our borders closed until we are confident that we have put in place measures to prevent travelers from importing the virus. These restrictions cannot and will not be a permanent feature of our lives, but they are for now essential to our survival. As I said last Sunday, I shall be outlining shortly the steps for systematically easing the restrictive measures to bring us back to normality. But I would plead with you, stop the stigmatization of recovered persons, as it will rather drive people away from getting screened, tested, and treated. The stigmatization of recovered persons must not go on, because if the virus did not end their lives and livelihoods, the stigma from members of their communities should not. The overwhelming majority of them will continue to live perfectly normal lives and cease to be sources of infections. Workers of Ghana, the role of organized labor during our national struggle for freedom and independence from the British colonial power is written in letters of gold. The historic call for positive action in 1950, made by our first president, Kwame Nkrumah, would not have succeeded without the active support of the trades union movement, then led by the legendary trades unionists, Pobi Bini and Vidal Quest. In the post-independent era, organized labor has continued to play a very constructive part in the development of our country. Today, our nation requires its active involvement in this fight against the pandemic, and I call upon all working people to step forward again. I'm confident that together, if we remain united and resolute and maintain discipline and self-discipline, we shall defeat this virus. This too shall pass, for the battle is the Lord's. Once again, I wish you a happy May Day celebration, even if a restrained one. May God bless all Ghanaian workers and us all, and may God bless our homeland Ghana and make her great and strong. I thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, the national anthem.
And of course, you had President Akufo-Addo delivering his speech on May Day. We'll be bringing you more of that, plus the reaction to the announcement he's made in that address on JoyNews today. For now, we continue to celebrate 25 years of media excellence, 25 years of joy, but also celebrate our frontline workers on a special day like this. Stay with us.
Let's meet our MVPs, leading the fight against an unseen enemy with their expertise on the battlefront, leaving their families and working extra shifts. This is where it starts for those treating COVID-19 patients directly here at the University of Ghana Medical Center. They have to first protect themselves by donning the appropriate personal protective equipment, popularly known as PPEs. Here at the regular treatment area, Dr. Emmanuel Amwa and Dr. Amma Edwin have to do this.
We are going to wear our full PPE. The reason is simple. When you go in there and then anybody needs any care, because we are in full PPE, we can offer the level of care, the needed care for every patient. If you are not fully donned, then when you go in, there may be some procedures you may not be able to do because you are not in the appropriate personal protective equipment.
I'm looking forward to see how the donning is done in, the appropriate ways of, donning the PPEs,
So there are protocols, and the protocols have steps. So the steps will be followed. So we have supervisors here whose sole responsibility is to make sure that healthcare workers are donned properly before they go to offer service.
Check if there's any hole somewhere, any tear, anywhere.
So it's been a few good minutes, trying to get myself in this. I have to tell you that it's not an easy process. My camera technician, Sami Hasante, is here with me. Sami, are you sure you can breathe?
I'm managing.
This is a laborious process and takes more than 20 minutes to don the full PPE here.
You can't just go in. For every patient you have to see, you have to plan. You have to plan the care. What exactly are we going to do in there? So that when you go in with, let's say, a doctor and a nurse, you'll finish all that has to be done for the patients before you come out.
We'll try as much as possible to give you a best eye view of what a day in our life here in the context of COVID-19 looks like. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. We are absolutely pleased to meet all of you. The situation at the intensive care unit, though similar, requires even more protection for obvious reasons. Dr. Daniel Soti and Dr. Emma Enima Adai of the intensive care unit have to don before they go inside the unit to offer patients there the critical care they need.
Our DDNS is going to be their supervisor for the donning, and they would also help each other don, and then we would meet them as they go in. Okay? Yeah, Emma and Daniel, you guys?
Yeah,
all right.
Let's get in and done.
When I was at the other end, it took a few good minutes, I have to say, for the donning process. I think it's the same.
Yes, it is. You need to take your time when you're donning, because you don't want any part of your body to be exposed. That is very critical, because once your body is exposed, then your likelihood of getting infected is high, and then that means you're out of commission for 2 weeks minimum, and that won't augur well for the patients that we are supposed to be taking care of.
So they have to make sure, because in their case, they are going to actually be touching patient, moving patient, adjusting oxygen delivery devices. They will definitely be in contact with surfaces that the patient has touched or had viruses have settled on. So they can therefore not be protected. If when they checked this PPE that it was not, there were tears, they're going to just tear the whole PPE and discard into the bin. We do not take any chance at all. And that is why it is important that these are available at every time. We go in frequently. The nurse has already gone in. The two of them are going to go in, review the patients that are there, work with the nurses and all that.
Such a painstaking process to go through, but for good reason.
Yeah, there are two reasons why you don't want your staff, your medical staff, and for that reason, for critical care staff to be contaminated or unduly exposed. One, because that is a risk to their life, which is the ultimate reason. But secondly, we do not have enough healthcare professionals. Anybody who is exposed, even if the person is not infected, we will not know until another 2 weeks. So if she goes in and then she's exposed because of the fact that there's part of her that is torn, then what that means is that when we doff her off, we're going to quarantine her for the next 2 weeks. And that means one of our limited staff already gone.
At this stage, we have to go back to perform hand hygiene, and we have to do this till the alcohol is dry, then we wear a pair of gloves. So that's what you see us doing. And we cannot skip any step in the donning, as Dr. Hu was saying, because every step is important.
to do all this because in critical care, we do a lot of procedures in different positions. Sometimes you may actually have a doctor who may have to go down to help lift up something. If this is too tight and you do this and then it tears, then you're basically coming out immediately. Okay, so all that is important in making sure that they're comfortable. These are critically ill patients requiring frequent entry into the ICU and then requiring continuous monitoring, which we do in our monitoring room all the way through there. So all this she's done is basically she's protected everywhere, making sure that no part of her body is exposed. And this is once use. She's going to use it only single. And then when she finishes, she's going to discard every one of them. And then in another short period of time, somebody else, you can see others are preparing in there, and then they would move in. So we use this so very frequently, and that is why when we talk about PPEs required frequently, that's what we're talking about. Unlike mild areas or patients who are asymptomatic, where we can do non-contact care, in the intensive care unit, we cannot do non-contact care. We may have patients who are ventilated. We may have patients who are not ventilated, but who are very ill, severely ill, and requiring our assistance to keep them alive. And therefore, we cannot have any prolonged period of time without a staff in there. Deputy Director Nursing Service, Mrs. Eyiram Ofe Oku, and Auntie Emma, one of our senior nurses, would actually come talk to Lordina. She had gone through what she's supposed to do, but they're going to reiterate all of that again, one by one, on a documented paper, but that paper is not going to go in. So I'm just going to leave them for DDNS to take over now to explain to us what we're going to do, because that's nursing care. That's not my part.
As Lordina is going inside, there are some instructions that I have to give to Lordina to do. And Lordina had to give this patient, Mr. L, metformin, to check RBS during output and feeding. And then Madam R, you check RBS and feeding. And then Mr. M, you give a paralysis scan and an FDP. And then you check RBS and urine and feeding. Thank you.
All right, Lordina, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
So intentionally, we've not used directly our patient's name because, again, patient confidentiality is extremely important. These are patients who are vulnerable, who are very ill, but we still respect every single part of their identity and we are ethical with their care. So Lordina knows who Mr. L, Madam M, and then whoever is, they would have agreed on all this, okay? All right.
Ready?
Yeah. Okay, so Dr. Dai opens the glass door. Lordina walks into the intensive care unit. And if you look inside the intensive care unit, apart from Lordina, you can see that there are 3 other people. Hello, guys, don't hide. Okay? So it is not only doctors and nurses who work in an intensive care unit. There are other health professionals who are also involved in the care and even in helping with what we do. So those are 3 biomedical engineers who work with us closely whenever we need something set up, a machine check and all that. But recognize the fact that they are also donned. Yes. They just don't walk in. I mean, previously, we just give them a single gown to cover their vessel, and then they come in and work on our machine. But they have to fully don. And donning takes quite some time. But even more important is that they have to work under this condition. They have to work with all this covering their face. Sometimes their goggles are blurred because they are breathing into it. Sometimes it's quite suffocating, and sometimes there's sweat underneath it, even if it's an ICU with air conditioning and all that. So you can see Lordina is preparing. But I also noticed that Lordina is talking to them so that if she needs any help, they are biomedical engineers, but they can still help her with nursing care. If they need any help, they can ask Lordina so that we do not multiply the number of people who are exposed at any point in time, okay?
So we're going in to meet Dr. Danny and Inima here, who are carrying out the activities. Okay, so I have made it. I feel like I've won an award. I've never been to an ICU before. So yeah, welcome Dr. Inima.
Welcome, Komla, to our intensive care unit for COVID patients. There are different degrees of illnesses, different degrees of infection. So as much as possible, we handle each individual patient with as much caution and care as we can. And we try not to transfer the viral load or the level of infection from one patient across to another patient.
Hello.
Hello, this is Dr. Adai calling from the ICU.
Okay.
Everything okay in the control room? All patients vital stable?
Okay. Yes, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that was just to demonstrate how we communicate with those outside. So as they are monitoring outside, we are monitoring inside, and we communicate with each other. If we need anything that we do not have in the ICU, we communicate the same way with them to get those items ready. And as Dr. O mentioned earlier, the care in here it's an overlapping care. Apart from medications, we have to do everything for the patients in here. We have to do nursing care, we have to bath them, we have to give them their food, we have to feed them, and we have to do hygiene, perform hygiene for them, because most of these patients are people who cannot do things on their own. So it's not just a matter of coming in and giving medication, it's a holistic care of the patient.
Okay, I see Dr. Soti. Let me just hear what he has to say.
Hello, Danny. Hello, Mr. A's blood sugar is 8.5.
Mr. A.
Yes.
Blood pressure.
Blood sugar.
Blood sugar is what?
8.5.
Blood sugar 8.5.
Yeah, and we've given 500 of metformin.
Okay.
To Kamala, let's go to the patient area that we have prepared in readiness to receive a patient, and then I'll go through some of the things and equipment that we use to manage the patients.
Okay, great. So let's just go.
This device here, that is what we call a ventilator or a life support machine. This hasn't been completely set up yet, but once it is completely set up, it has a couple of tubings coming in and out of it, which we use to connect to the patient. Now, there are two ways of connecting this life support machine or ventilator to a patient. So we call it invasive ventilation and non-invasive ventilation. Now, with the non-invasive ventilation, what we do is that we put a mask over the face of the patient, either covering the whole face or covering just the nose and the mouth of the patient. And then this machine blows air or forces air into the nose and mouth and then down into the patient's lungs. So if you have a patient or a person who, as a result of COVID or any other kind of disease, is not able to breathe properly, then this machine helps that patient to breathe.
Yes. You finished your rounds?
Yes, I finished my rounds. Even as we go about working, we are keeping an eye on each other. So I'm watching Daniel or Dr. Soti to make sure that his seal is intact as we move about, as he also monitors me. If at any point we notice that anybody has a break in their seal, that person must leave and doff off or take off the PPEs immediately. Okay.
So I've just been told that in a very short time they will get out of here. They've administered the care that they had to, provide to those who are here, and in a short time we all will be coming out. A few more communications here and there, and once that is sorted, we'll just move out. And remember, we have been told that once staff get in here, they do not get out.
because of the obvious, the possibility of getting infected?
Okay, so at this moment, we finished with performing our task, and so we are going out to do what we call doffing, and we are going out with you so that you see the process of doffing.
Okay.
So we need to move, you'll be directed to the doffing area.
Okay, sure.
Now I need to mention that the duration of time you spend in here depends on the task you have to perform. There have been times when we've had to stay here for 2 hours, 3 hours. Personally, I've had to stay here for 4 hours before in this, or 5 hours. Now I don't know how you feel and how comfortable you are.
I am literally suffocating, but I can't say it.
Yeah, so imagine being in this for hours, and for these hours, not just standing, but actually busy working. And you realize that it is not an easy state to work in. So at this moment, we are going out to doff. And the doffing isn't just about just removing everything at once, as you see. We take you through the process, and you realize it's a very deliberate process, more thorough even than the donning, because the doffing is the area where you can pick up the most infection. No matter how tired or exhausted you are, you have to take your time to doff off.
Wow.
Go ahead, spray. Go ahead, spray. It's pushing. Stretch out your hand like it's here. Let us spray the cushion of the camera, of the mic. Okay, so that's fine. All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, go. The next line. Okay.
So it feels like I've been to battle, and back. It's not been easy, but these, health officials do this on a daily basis, really, since COVID. So I guess we have to give it up to them. It's not been easy for me. But Dr. O, we're out of that side.
How was it in there?
I've just been to war and back. Really.
All right, so this is basically what we do every day for the past 4 going on 5 weeks. Basically doing ICU, but not only just doing ICU, but doing ICU in the midst of an infectious disease, a very dreadful infectious disease. But we're getting used to it. We just, as I said earlier, on hope that this is contained.
Dr. O, we'll start with you, but this is more personal. I just heard you tell Dr. Ankama that she gets home sometime 10 p.m. and after every day since this. That must not have been easy.
No, it's not easy. In COVID-19, you now have to not only do this, work late, get home late, but now with your family wondering whether you're getting infected and whether you're bringing infection home. It is difficult for them. You have to keep reassuring them. There are psychological aspects of this which you have to keep reassuring them. Sometimes they feel lonely, but somebody's got to do this. And that's what we signed up for. That somebody at this moment in our history as health workers happens to be us. It would be nice to have this done, to have this virus get out of our country, to get back to what we used to do, and get back to our families. Trust you me, it would be nice.
Yeah, I miss the old days. I miss family, of course. I miss friendships and those social interactions. They really meant a lot, and we now value those interactions more now because we are unable to do them these days. Dr. Nai, I want you to just wrap up for me. How has this changed your routines outside business?
Well, this whole thing, it's a battle of a sort. It's like war. It's like soldiers going to war. Before you leave to go to war, you have to prepare the minds of your family back at home. We've handled it differently. Some of us have had to separate ourselves fully from our family members. Like myself, currently I'm home alone. I've had to separate myself from my family members because some of them are among a higher risk group. If they get the infection, they'll be among the higher risk group. So as a first line, I've had to separate myself from my family for this period. You have to go through a ritual every day. When you get to your workplace, you have to go through a ritual before you can work. When you close from work, you have to go through a ritual. Sometimes you have to take a shower at the workplace. When you go back home, there's a whole ritual you perform. When you leave and you're going home, you cannot use public transportation anymore. You cannot expose many people to you because of the area where you have worked. So all that has also changed. Of course, our social activities have also changed. You can't, even though they say the lockdown has been lifted and some people can do certain things now, we are still on our own form of lockdown whilst we work in the treatment centers. And it is not every health worker who would accept to work in a treatment center. This is a volunteer job we are doing. We had to volunteer to come to the treatment centers. Every aspect of our lives have changed, and the psychology as well, because when a patient passes away, it is not an easy experience at all. I've heard people say, oh, you people are doctors, you've seen death so many times, so you're not affected. Trust you me, every single patient who passes away affects us. We are very, very touched by what happens to any patient. In the same way, when a patient recovers, we are extremely excited. It encourages us to keep pushing because we've seen people recover. But when we lose somebody, it is traumatic. Unfortunately, you don't have the time to spend days mourning. The next day, the work goes on. Other patients are being admitted. Other people's conditions are changing. So all we have is each other.